All right, girls. I got cut off in my last podcast because apparently I have the free version of this program, and so I can only record in 15-minute increments, which is probably for the best. But anyway, we are we finished looking at the Maesta altarpiece. We ended with this slide, so I am going to keep zipping along here, trying not to repeat myself too much, but also trying to emphasize things that I know you'll be tested on. This is one of the scenes from the Masked Altarpiece that I thought was pretty cool. We talked about, again, the use of perspective here and the subject matter, the typical image of Christ, but also this idea of the devil and how artists have different ideas of what the devil looks like. So that was pretty interesting. Moving along to more Duccio. So we talked about how Giotto and Duccio are sometimes grouped together in that, they are really paying attention to making the figures look alive, incorporating emotion, incorporating movement, paying attention to composition and not necessarily putting the subject matter directly in the center of the piece. One thing that I forgot to mention that, is in the beginning of the PowerPoint is, the innovations in linear perspective and modeling of the figures, but also this attention to the natural world. We're learning that artists are going outside and observing things from life. They're painting trees as they see them, they're painting rocks as they see them, etc. Though the rocks in this painting do look a little stylized. I don't know that I've ever seen a rock look that simplified. It's certainly lacking texture, but it's a start for sure. Okay, so this is the betrayal of Jesus. You all probably know the story behind this from your religion classes. Another tempera on wood. Take note of those bright green cloaks, the bright red cloaks. This is achieved through the use of tempera. And here is that term that you need to know, chiaroscuro, okay? The use of light and dark, okay? We have a light source. We see light hitting the shoulders of the figures, okay? Near the bottom, we're seeing shadows, okay? They seem to be planted on the ground rather than floating, okay? And again, lots of overlapping, lots of emotion going on, okay? So I think we can move on. All right, covered all of this. Okay, so I think this is where we stopped in class. So this is another altarpiece made of tempera and gold leaf. So I think they talked about it a little bit in the video, and you saw actually how this gold leaf is applied, but it's really pretty amazing. They're using these like really thin sheets or flakes of gold and kind of inlaying them in the background. And that's a big reason why a lot of these pieces are taken apart and sold and stolen, and then, art historians are left to kind of try to figure it out. And many of the images in our book are actual reconstructions. I mean, you can see that in the caption here, reconstructed in the 19th century. So this may not be exactly how it looked when Simone Martini created it, but it's, probably pretty close. So you want to pay attention to this extremely decorative style going on here, okay? And this is the international style, also referred to as the court style, okay? So those kind of go hand in hand. Involves brilliant colors, lavish costumes, intricate ornamentation, and themes involving processions. All right, so associate it with wealthy Italians, government officials, people who were of means during this time. Okay, and also what Gothic features do you see? What features of this altarpiece, resemble parts of a Gothic cathedral that we studied in the last chapter? Think about that. And of course, if you have time, please watch the video from Khan Academy on this piece. Okay, moving on. This is by Pietro Lorenzetti, The Birth of the Virgin. This is from another altarpiece, looking at a lot of large-scale altarpieces, which, some were in public cathedrals, some would have been in private cathedrals for private devotion. So, pay attention to that as well. You always have to think about not only the subject matter and the formal aspects of the work, but what is the purpose? Who, what, why, when, where, who was it made for, why was it made, etc. So what is notable about this scene? Look at the architecture here. Okay, clearly Gothic. All right, you have the Gothic rib vault. You have the pointed arches. Okay, and most notable is it almost looks like we're peering into this scene. It looks like we're observing these figures interacting with one another and almost like we're peering into a window. Okay, so pictorial illusionism, big. Okay, moving on. All right, still in Siena and Florence, and forget if we talked about this in class or not. The Palazzo Publico, almost like a city hall in Siena, but very different from the architecture we've been looking at so far. Very different from Northern Gothic, and not so close to the Italian Gothic buildings we've looked at so far. Very geometric. And almost military looking. So, very distinguishing building. And also note the attached bell tower or campanile. Okay, so these gigantic wall paintings are inside of the Palazzo Publico, painted by Ambrogio Lorenzetti. This one is Peaceful City. This one is Peaceful Country. And do we have another one? I guess not. Okay, sorry, going back. So again, very large scale. I guess they don't have the dimensions on here, but would have covered an entire wall inside of this building. And this is where, they're making important decisions about, city life in Siena. So, it has a purpose. It's, influencing the men who are working in this building and making decisions that affect all of the townspeople. So you see merchants selling things, people moving about the streets. Things are prosperous, people are happy, and also obviously look at the buildings. They're very three-dimensional. They seem to be receding in space, and while the perspective is not necessarily correct, it's definitely, this attempt at creating linear perspective. All right, and note the pointed arches, the lancet windows are kind of snuck in there, so, hints of Gothic architecture are there. Okay, and this is Peaceful Country, also in the Palazzo Publico by Lorenzetti. Trying to think if I wanted to mention anything about this. This again is a perfect example of this interest in the natural world. Artists kind of returning to nature, painting things around them, flora and fauna. And this is one of the first landscape paintings we see since Rome. So that's pretty important. Okay, we talked about this briefly. You need to know this. This is the Florence Cathedral or the Florence Baptistry. And it says Arnolfo de Cambio and others. So he, started this building, but the dome or the Duomo was designed by Filippo Brunelleschi, who we'll talk about in, he's associated with High Renaissance, but he designed that dome. We kind of looked at the shell, how it's this hollow shell and contains those ribs, which is pretty cool to see. We have, again, the attached bell tower, characteristic feature of Italian Gothic architecture. Usually when you see that attached bell tower, you can associate it with Italian architecture. And again, what is the exterior of this building covered with? Do you remember? Marble incrustation. Where else did we see that? The Pantheon. Good. And also, what are these little round windows? Hope you said oculi. Good. And anything else I wanted to say about this? Very different from what we saw in England and Germany and in France. You know, this is a Gothic cathedral. Think about how different this looks from all those French cathedrals we looked at in chapter 18. Lots of differences going on. And you will have to talk about those differences, so know them. Okay, this is the inside of the Florence Baptistry. Okay, what typical Gothic features do you see in the nave? Hopefully I don't have to point them out to you. Moving along, another view. We're looking at some piers. Okay. This is the nave of Santa Maria Novella in Florence, another church in Florence. And again, you see the pointed Gothic rib vaults, but you know, this decoration I think is characteristic of Italian Gothic. So Italian Gothic cathedrals always have the exterior decoration and sometimes interior decoration. So that's one way of distinguishing them. And also the marble incrustation is big. Okay, moving along. Also, you can see those lancet windows in the apse too. So that's another giveaway that we're in the Gothic period. Moving along. Okay, we're nearing the end. And I only have 3 minutes, so I have to wrap this up. So this is Or San Michele. I am going to breeze over it, but there is so much to see here. Intense detail, okay? And this is a tabernacle, okay? This is where children would have been baptized, obviously inside of a cathedral. And we have 2 artists associated with this piece who are followers of Giotto, or Cagna and Dadi, okay? And again, we see an image of the Virgin. I wish we had a close-up, but you know, I encourage you to watch this Khan Academy video because they really go into detail and give, you know, show you close-ups, and you know, you're able to see it in the round. So please do that. Okay, and we're going to end with this large-scale fresco. I wanted you to recall that term earlier. Hopefully you remember what true fresco is. True fresco is when artists are painting directly onto the wall with dry pigments into wet fresco. It was very much permanent, became part of the wall. And this is by Francesco Traini and Buonomico Buffalmacco. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, but don't quote me on that. And this is the Triumph of Death, and this is, you know, scenes of suffering that's happening towards the end of the 14th century. The Great Schism, the 100 Years' War, the Black Death, and this is a detail for you so you can see all of these people falling ill. And not only that, but we can tell that they, you know, they're wealthy people. They look like they're people of means, religious figures and such falling ill with the Black Death. So we see this this good period in the 14th century coming to an end. Okay, so I will be having a brief review session on Monday after school for your test. We're having your test on Tuesday on chapter 18 and chapter 19, and this is kind of a slide with some hints of what you can expect on the test, but I just really encourage you to do the reading, review the PowerPoints, and come to the review session. So good luck, and I'll see you hopefully on Friday.